Welcome, everyone. Happy New Year. Yay.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Daniel.
Hi.
Happy New Year to you, too.
How are things in Texas?
Good overall. Welcome, everyone. Happy New Year. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I have to close the sound.
Yeah.
Here in Montreal, it's white and snowy. Where do you live, Daniel?
I'm near Seattle. And
okay.
It was white here about 5 days ago, but now it's melted and we've been having solid rain for the last day. Here, it's just becoming daylight.
Yeah. So you're quite in the north, but not enough to have the solid snow.
We had it a week. Yeah. We had it for about 5 days.
Yeah.
I guess you probably always have a white Christmas.
I would say 4 out of 5 years. Sometimes it melt before Christmas, but usually yes.
We had it late on Christmas Day, and then it stayed through about New Year's, and now it's gone.
Mm-hmm. I'll just close my speaker here.
So Daniel, do you have anything in particular you're working on?
Well, I have a bunch of small tip questions about techniques, and they're all small things. One is if I have a loop, for example, I have a loop that's a very simple auto hotkey program. It's the down arrow, pause, 0.2 of a second. Yeah.
If I interrupt you just for 1 second, do you have it? Can you share your screen? It's just easier to talk through.
Do you want code or what? Probably code is better. I'm guessing.
You can share your screen if you want, and just the code. Yeah.
Yeah, I have it on my work computer.
Okay.
I think I can do that.
We can finish your conversation. I just thought if you had it handy, it's easier to see it and discuss it.
It might be. I think I can do that. It might take me a couple minutes to figure it out. Take longer than describing it. And it's basically how would you do this question? This thing is so simple that words would do.
Yeah, all right, let's go for it.
It's the down arrow, pause, 200 milliseconds, press the down arrow again. And I have it, that's it. And so I have a loop because I don't know how long it's got to last. What's the nicest way for the user to stop a endless loop that consists only of down arrow and pause for 200 milliseconds?
Personally, I just have a hotkey that would pause, probably, unless you have something else going on, I would just pause the script.
And I want the script, I want pause, not exiting. And so would you put in, and what would your command for pause be? Would it be the send command thing?
No, there's, in Jean, do you recall, there's a toggle, and I'm trying to remember if it's actually in the help. There's a really great example of
command. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, there's the suspend command. What is it?
There's things like continue that you can use.
That's just continuing on into your loop. If you find something like you're going along and you check an evaluation, then you would continue and it would not keep going down in that loop. So that's not what you want. You want to pause the script is what it sounds like.
And have it restartable again.
Sure. And that's where that toggle, and I'm trying to think of, I have
something I can post on the chat.
Well, you just share your screen if you want, or I can. But
yeah, I can share it too. I will. So I'll take an example. In fact, if there are other solutions, maybe Joe, you know other solutions, but one is just to suspend the script, like you would do by right-clicking on the icon on the taskbar and select suspend hotkeys. So I guess it would do the pause that you wish. So this code here. I'll make it bigger. So the command suspend, comma, and then you enter on or off. So if you enter off, it will suspend the hotkeys of your script. and on it will resume. And to make it a toggle, so when you call it, it will turn to the opposite of what it is currently. You can use this ternary condition. What's the exact name of this kind of syntax here? So if it is suspended, then enter add off, and if it's not suspended, make it on, so it will toggle the value. After that, I have a few commands for quick access pop-up that will check or uncheck. If you see here, you see suspend hotkeys on the right side of my screen. If I suspend it, it will now be checked. So in indicating that hotkeys from quick access pop-up will not work while it is suspended. So it is not required to make it work. It's just something for the user interface to give feedback to the user that the hotkeys are suspended. So that's the menu trace. If it is suspended, check. If it's not suspended, uncheck. And if doing it also in the menu bar where there's the same option that is available there. But the command that you really need is this. Now you need a way to activate the suspension of your hotkeys, and then you could have a hotkey that would be Shift Control Z, for example, that will toggle the execution of the hotkeys of your script.
Okay, and then it would go to this this subroutine would be run by your.
Yeah, you would have something like. I'm not good at doing coding live, so I'll just try. So let's say we have a loop here, and it is doing a tooltip.
Actually, I think you've made it pretty clear how to do this.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And I will look at when this gets on recorded. I'll look at your
okay.
wording.
So is my syntax correct, Joe?
I don't use the. That's an interesting approach, Sean. I was going to tell you that A is suspended. I usually just store a variable and then flip it. I use a toggle to flip it, but I like your solution. It's a little more advanced, complicated, but it's not complex. So it could be wrong. It's just for someone that's new.
Yeah,
it's
maybe, yeah.
But I really like it. I'm gonna have to borrow it.
And just to test it, I will make a message box with the result of what we did. And here I'll put some okay, so let's hope it will work. Why is it doing that? I'm just trying to start the debugger. Oh, I have to save it. Yeah, for sure. I'll save it here. Okay, oops, just run it. So we have this, the tooltip that is small, 6. So if I press Win key with Z, it gives the feedback that now it is suspended and it's still working. Yeah, but yeah, it's still working, but the hotkeys that would be inside your loop will not be effective. That's what will happen. No, I think I'm wrong. I think I'm wrong. It will interrupt the hotkeys, but not the execution of your loop. So it was pretty clear, but not necessarily the right solution, I guess.
Well, is it pause that you want instead of suspend?
Maybe, yeah. That's
ideally. I would like the execution to stop, but I would like to be able to restart the program on another page later.
Sure.
So I'm not sure the difference between suspend and pause.
Maybe.
One other thing you can do now.
That's what I wanted. Yeah, you're wrong. And there's the is paused.
Well, the problem is once it's paused, you wouldn't be able to use a hotkey to unpause it.
So I don't think
right.
Pause.
Yeah. Well, you do, but we can't use Jean's approach because
to restart it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Which is why I was trying to find an example of it. I just haven't done it in a while. But I store a variable, like I first set it to 1, so it's in the sense that it's running. And then I have a hotkey that will change that one. It'll toggle it to between 0 and 1, right? And then inside that loop, it'll only execute it if it's a 1. And so it's the toggle. It's great because it's like, John, do you remember? It's like var : equals no.
I'll let you share your screen. Maybe you can show us.
Well, I gotta find it. Yeah, that's the problem. Now the other approach that I
so this works here, where in fact Windows Z interrupted my script, so we were stopped at 11 here, but to restart it,
right,
is just no. Yeah, it worked.
Oh, did it?
Why
don't you change the line 11 to a tooltip instead of a message box? Also,
yeah.
It might be a little less intrusive.
So 1, 2, 3, I press Win Z. It is stop at 5.
Am I missing it?
And I didn't see the tooltip. Maybe it was, but if I press Win Z again, it starts over. So it does what we want, I think. It doesn't interrupt the hotkey.
The loop?
It interrupts the loop, but it does not prevent the hotkey to work, to still work, to restart the loop. So I just restarted here. What we don't see here is the tooltip. Maybe I should put a little sleep.
Well, or put it before the pause.
Oh, yeah, good point. And also,
and then the sleep, yeah.
Sleep for 2 seconds. Start
it's a tooltip though. Like, I don't understand why it still wouldn't.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at 8. I'll stop it. Pause. It says pause 0. Yeah, but because it's paused before it is being paused, then after that, after the 2 seconds, it's been paused. And if I press Win Z again, it will say pause 1 because it's still paused at the moment the line 10 is executed.
Yeah, we're not seeing any of that, John.
What don't you see?
I don't. All I see is your mouse moving around.
You see my script?
I'm sorry, I see your script too, yes, but I don't see any sort of a tooltip, anything.
The status. Yeah, there's a tooltip here paused.
Okay. No, yeah, it's not visible. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. First, I'll just put the header that will make.
I've never had that with Zoom. That's interesting. Did you share just site?
No, I shared the.
Oh, okay.
I think I shared the whole screen. So do you see the tooltip? 1, 2, 3?
No.
No. Okay. I'll just stop sharing and.
So the other way you could easily do this is have a master script that launches your looping thing, and then your hotkey just kills the script. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and in fact, I've started to look at that on your, Joe. You have a model of a menu control program on your downloadable things, and I downloaded that, and I've started to try to use that. I don't remember what it's called. It uses the post command functions in it. It lists all the hotkeys that are running.
Yeah, the hub. Yeah, that's a great one for when you have scripts that are running that you can't, edit or open or pause or whatever. Yeah, it's very cool for that.
And I don't know if that's a good model of what to use as a menu, or whether that's one of my questions for you today is recommended methods of making a control menu for the other programs. It has, as you just mentioned, a control program has the advantage that it can pause and restart other programs without itself being paused. And I am interested in your recommended methods of making a master control program.
Well, to me, I don't think I'm not sure how I would answer that question other than having one is great. I have mine is like 2,000 lines long, and I have a lot of stuff in it. And then there's some things I don't want running all the time. And so those are things I will have a hotkey that launches it. And then then they're on their own, and then I have some sort of a key that'll exit it, or I right click the icon and exit when I'm done, or whatever. Now, John, if you haven't seen it, go ahead, John.
Yeah, there may be an approach, but it's quite advanced. It's to send messages between one script to the other. So you could launch 3 scripts that would have code in them that will listen to messages coming from Windows, coming from outside of them at a given address with a given number. And then you could have your control script that would send messages to one or the other of your scripts by sending a message to a given address. So the script that is listening for a message would receive a message that could tell him start or stop or change something. And then it would execute this action. And after the action is done, it would wait and still listening for another message coming from the control program. I could show an example of that on the new program I'm just working on, where I have 2 scripts, one that is managing rules, another script that is executing the rules, and one is sending commands to the other. But it's not, there's a learning curve probably to get to there, but with some example, probably something that could be done.
So I was imagining, for my use, something much simpler. A program that starts it by just sending the sub scripts auto hotkey that starts it, and which could be a more complicated one, like 4 keys to press or something, and then use the functions that is in the program I got from Joe with the post commands to stop them and list them. But to start them, I was just going to send the sub scripts auto hotkey, or subscripts hotkey.
The thing, and it's funny that John jumps to his advanced answer when QAP is an amazing tool, quick access pop-up. It's what John's main script, I guess I'd say, is that you worked on. If you haven't used it, it's an amazing tool. It's what if I want something more than a hotkey to launch a script, then I use QAP, because I can very quickly build menus and trigger hotkey scripts and trigger parameters to them. I mean, it's amazing what you can do with it. And it's so easy, because then the reorganizing of it actually, John, and one I've talked to you about it, is like, I wanted to show, hey, let's say, because I have menus, let me share my screen. Or did you have anything else to share, John, on the screen, or are we good?
No.
Okay. So, and actually I think this was a decent example here, but I was going to look at it. But now this tool, this is an auto hotkey menu structure, right? And I have a crap load of stuff in here, and a lot of them launch other scripts, just like I was describing. However, you can see, like, let's go to the sequel. Like, it's nested, right? This thing is under this, and these are under those. And this script, to create it manually, and especially if I wanted to move something from here over to here, would really be painful. Now, I'm going to click a different hotkey. This is QAP, right? Looks identical because it's still written in auto hotkey, but I can come in here, and you can have menus and submenus, right? I've done a lot of videos on this. It can launch programs, it can launch folders, it can do a lot of stuff. But I'm going to come into customize, and if I want to move something, I can come in here and I can hit move and just drag it, basically. Not drag, but you get the idea, right? It's so much easier to move things around, besides add icons and do a lot of other stuff. I never would have created the other tools I have if I had known about QAP at the time.
If I ever wanted to share a set of programs that I wrote with other people, it might be nice to give them a menu of those,
sure,
which might be like 4 or 5. What do you suggest for if I wanted to share things? Right now, it's not hard for me to run them each individually, but I wanted to.
Can you clarify? Sorry, Daniel, sorry for cutting you off. Go actually finish your statement, because it might be answering my question.
So I wanted to make it easier for a person less knowledgeable about the scripts to use them, including things just like what are their names and what are the hotkeys for them.
Well, yeah. And my first question would be, are these people that like you work with on a regular,
yes.
Okay, well then QAP has built-in shared menus as well, and you could add stuff into a shared menu. You have a folder, is that right, John? A shared folder somewhere, and it makes it very easy for you to add. And it's really cool. I found like I sound like I'm a John. You got to send me that check later for my infomercial. You have different modes where one is, hey, you can have a shared folder. Like John and I don't know if we still have it, but we had a shared folder at one point, and he could add stuff and delete stuff, and so could I, to that same one in the same menus, right? Or you can create a like kind of master mode where you are the author and you can build what you want and other people can use it, but they can't change it, right? Which is
more precisely, it's called shared menu, and the menu itself is built based on the content of a setting file, an ini file, Windows ini file, that can be on a network drive or on a cloud drive, where every user can configure their menu to get the content from this settings file. It's not as simple as installing a simple script with a menu with 5 items. That's something you could probably do, but it gives more control on this menu if you want to make it evolve in the future, add things, and you can be the one controlling the content of this shared menu, or other users could also contribute if you make this menu to be in collaborative mode. So every user could add content to this menu. But it's so you have to set up an application. It's something that is require probably more work than just creating your small script. But so it's up to you to see what approach you prefer.
I see how that'd be very useful in our work environment. This may seem strange to you, but we do not easily have a shared space. There is one you can get at, but you almost need, like, I think you need some kind of administrator privilege to set it up.
It depends on the IT rules. Yeah.
So it is possible, but it would be much easier just to email programs to people and have them use them themselves.
Yeah.
So I'll explore that more.
Sometimes just installing a script or a program requires admin rights. So it depends on the configuration of your.
What I've been doing, I do not install auto hotkey on the work computer. I use the method of putting the auto hotkey program in it, and then executable, and then putting the script and giving them the same first name, prefix, and then it clicking on. It sounds like you're well familiar with this, and so has been my method of using it on the work computer without installing it. I end up then with many copies of the same executable, all with different first names. One to match each script, but it works. And so that's what I've been doing. Before I discovered that, I was quite frustrated that I was using the compile method, but then that was laborious because you have to, each time you make a modification, you have to recompile. So this is, at least I can edit on the work computer to try out new things.
When this is a lifetime ago, it was a long time ago, and it's funny because my post is probably still there in the forum somewhere, but I was complaining because at TI I had like 5 computers that I worked on, and it was really getting problematic to keep my scripts up to date on every computer. And someone's like, why don't you use Dropbox? I'm like, what the hell is Dropbox? This was a long time ago, but
it's a security issue. It's a security pitfall.
But what I also did, this Daniel could be very helpful for you as a concept, depending on how much level of power you have on your computers. But I create a quote unquote B drive on every computer, and then every computer starts with the same root, and I put my same files under that same location. And so I don't have to worry about the paths of files because on every computer, they're all the same, if that makes sense.
So you didn't say that the B drive is linked to your Dropbox root.
Well, it is, but it doesn't have to be, right? It helps, right? That is on mine. But even if you didn't have that, you could still, at least that way, you could have them on a thumb drive and move them around. And you don't have to worry about, well, where was this one? Where's that one? And the parent, in structuring your code in a way that'll always use relative locations, right? Because they're all the same. Sorry, Daniel.
I do something very similar. I have all my scripts on my personal network space, and then on each of the subcomputers that are link to that, I have a shortcut that opens the folder where all the scripts are. So I'm opening the folders on my network space, and that works fine. So I move around, I've got the same one. So that one's working. You remind me of something I see. This is only slightly related. Many people are putting in their programs escape : exit or something like that to stop the program. I see it frequently.
Sure.
That will work only once, I think, because yeah, because you're reusing the same hotkey in more than one script. And I think the only way I can think of get around that is to use the master control program to exit them. You can't have a universal exit in each of your scripts because you're reusing the same hotkey.
It wouldn't know which one to quit. Sure. Yeah.
And is the master control program the only way to attempt to get a universal rememberable exit?
Well, it still wouldn't actually do that because it would only
have to exit all of them.
Right. I mean, you'd have to loop over all of them and do that. What you could do, well, and that's where if the program has a GUI, you make it somewhat easier because you could say, hey, if this thing is active, exit out of it. Or maybe you have a hotkey that you hit it. You could adapt that script hub I made to have a hotkey that pulls up and says, which of the AutoHotkey scripts do you want to exit? Right. That would probably be pretty easy to put together and make it simple enough that, you don't have to use my approach is having a whole hub and you can go through for each script and decide what you want. But if you only want to have a hotkey to kill a program, right, that I think I would build something special just for that.
I like the idea of having an emergency exit in each program, especially if I lent it to someone else and they didn't know what was going on. Originally I was thinking it would be nice to just tell them always the escape and it'll stop whatever it's doing. But that doesn't work if you got more than one.
What I would probably do, just because, well, I'll be kind here and just say people forget things or whatever. I would just always make sure that icon is in the icon tray and tell them, hey, for your default exit, you go down and you right click and you hit exit.
Oh, yes, that is good. I was trying to make it even simpler for someone.
There's no problem having it as an option. It's just people forget what the hotkey is, and this way it's like, this is a given. As long as you're showing that icon, it's a given works.
The problem is that many scripts would have the same icon. So what you could do is to put custom icons for the tray for each program. Yeah, so it will help to identify which one to turn off.
Letters of the alphabet as mine.
So something I would add, Daniel, about what you said earlier about using the executable file of AutoHotkey, renaming it with the same name and then the script. If you have 5 scripts, what you could do is just put one instance of AutoHotkey.exe and call this instance and adding as a parameter the name of the script that you want to run. So there's a syntax that I don't have at end here, but it would be maybe just an approach if having multiple copies of the exe file gets an issue, then only one would be required, but giving as a parameter which one of the scripts you want to run.
That sounds very sophisticated, and I wasn't even aware of it at all. Since AutoHotkey is not very big, I can probably keep going with the method I have, although yours sounds much more elegant.
Yeah.
I wanted to show this one real quickly here. This is my media player, which I've had forever. And it uses, I have several hotkeys, but I can hit a hotkey. And if you see the little guitar down here, so that just started it. I hit it again, it stops it. Hit it again, it starts it. I hit it again, it stops it. Right. So it's very similar to what you were doing. And that's what I had. This is where I was like, oh, I was going to try to tease out what I did for the pausing. But so Control Shift P or the pause button or the media pause button all do the same thing. They update that tray icon and then they hit pause. Oh, that's easy. Does that make sense?
I would try it.
Yeah. Cool. Did you have other questions? It sounded like
one more.
Sure.
And that is one of the programs I work with is through Citrix, and I can't get any of the highly useful auto hotkey commands, but what I can do is read pixels and things, and I want a function that would tell me when the page is updated. So because sometimes it's accessing a database, and sometimes it takes a variable amount of time, never more than 5 seconds, but I want to know when the page is updated. And I thought what I should do is pixel sampling for update. If I can find a spot that always changes, like for example, there's a number that tells me I'm on the 22nd time I've hit the page, and then 23rd. I could sample pixels where that number is displayed. I might have to sample more than one pixel, like identify 5 pixels that change when I'm going from number 12 to number 23 or something. And each time those pixels change, it knows that the page is updated. And I was curious of the best method for me to use.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options, right? The first one I would say, just because, of course, this is my tool, is AutomateMyTask is a tool that it helps you write your auto hotkey syntax, right? So I'm going to hit F1 and say, oh, let's say I was looking for that, and F1 and move away. Now I hit it again. Okay, I can display matches. Oh, look, it found it. And then, because that, I don't know if, let's see, if I click, it's going to stop. There we go. So that'll a click should bring that up, right? So this is going to default. It tries to send a control click. So I'm going to hit test. So a control click didn't work. So I'm going to send an actual click. And it worked, but it flashed. Now this would actually work fine in your code. But what I realized, I haven't released this yet, is, hey, you know what? Let's just leave it. What the tool automatically does is reactivates this script because it assumes you want it to be active. So this option now, what? Oh, no, I was on Studio. Huh, that's funny, they look the same. So now it clicked it and see how it moved it, right? But you could basically use this tool, because what's also really cool about this is when I hit, I'm going to break them on the new lines just so you can see it better. It gives you your syntax, and this is a digital representation of this. So you don't have to have the files anywhere, which to me is a really big plus. Now, it's not something that's going to work reliably on different computers. So don't try to give this to other people. Like that often fails. But and you can do steps and stuff, but it's a fairly robust tool that allows you. And if you wanted to send text, if there was an edit field, I could use the F2 to send text to a certain spot. And have an offset and stuff. So I got to finish. There's one thing I was acting weird on, so I'm not quite done, but the current version should be fine, with what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What was the name of that again?
AutomateMyTask.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you just go
I have not tried that yet. Yeah.
AMT. So that, I'll put it in the chat and the other one. It's a good, it's a pretty solid tool. I noticed, so that little bit that I just described about how it clicks it, but it would disappear. That was, I don't want to call it a bug. It was just a poor design of like, oh, hey, sometimes like in what I noticed, Zeus, sorry, my dog really wants to be in the podcast or call.
Mine's too, but he's asleep.
So, in order to click this, if you activate anything else, it disappears lightning fast. And so I realized, now again, when you export the script, it would work fine. However, when you're using the testing, it would seem like it broke. So I'm gonna hit F1, come over here, and the reason why
you want to share your screen, Joe?
Oh, is it not on? Sorry,
no,
I thought it was on. There it is. Share. So I'm in F1, so you move over, but notice sometimes see how the colors change, and that's why when you hit F1, when you get what you want, I'm going to move away, and it says, okay, now when the colors are back to what it's going to be, hit F1 again, and it locks it in, right? And this display matches. This is where I've still had some weird problems with Chrome. With it not always finding the right one. So yeah, this is where I'll be right back.
Yeah.
That's fine. Go take care of your guy.
Daniel, I put on the Zoom chat the syntax to launch a script using one AutoHotkey exe file. It's not that complex. You don't have to use switches. You don't have to add parameters, but just AutoHotkey.exe, and then the script path, if it can help.
You guys always give me a lot of ideas to try, and sometimes I don't even see all the aspects of them until later.
Yeah, and that's very common, honestly. Jean and I were just talking the other day about how important it is to have either someone else. And the other thing I would say, so either have someone to talk to and bounce ideas off of, or just go to the forum and look at what's new. And here's the important thing. Don't just look at the title and say, I would never use that, right? Often you really kind of got to look a little closer and go, wait a minute, what are they doing here? And sometimes, not always, but sometimes you'll go, you know what? I didn't think I would ever use that, but now I see how I can use this.
So what I was thinking of doing of the page update was initially like picking 5 pixels that always had a constant reference from, say, upper left corner of the displayed window, and where it showed a number that changed, and sample those 5 pixels, do something like maybe even add them together, and the color values, and every time it changes, consider that a marker of page change. So that was my concept of how I would do this.
Yeah, you could store it. Yeah, you could just store it. Well, let's see. Because you could also build it in to go and get the, I guess, I think you're right. That's a good idea, is just do some math, because they should be identical every time, right?
Or you could even
and
do
maybe
logic math, like a ands on all of the pixels or something even.
Well,
I don't know what to think about that.
Yeah, and that's where I just don't use pixel search enough, and when I do, I use AutomateMyTask, which negates the need to really understand it. But from my experience, even the same programs and stuff, they will possibly change colors. And I don't, you got to also remember, it's not actually what's on your screen. It's what Windows thinks is on your screen, right? So hopefully that wouldn't change as far as the pixels. So, but anyway, my point being is you might want to allow for a little bit of variance when you're doing that, not do an exact number.
Or
what's that?
Variance in color or pixel color, or who knows?
I'm just saying, if they all added up to 1,000, you might say, hey, anything that's 950 to 1,150 is okay. Does that make sense?
Since computers are relatively fast, we don't have to add them first. We can just compare each one to its previous geographic spot, and if any of the geographics. Pixel XY 2 and 3. Anytime that one changes, or pixel 4,6 changes, it's fast enough that what would be tedious for a human would still be okay for it.
Yeah, but my point is, I think you're going to have a lot of times where that happens, but it really didn't update.
Oh, interesting. So, and why is that? Because it's a different, like, things appear the same color and they're not, or?
Well, again, it's really, I don't want to get caught up in the screen displaying anything, because of course Windows is going off of what's actually it's sending, not what we see, right? But I just think that I know from talking to Jackie, who's done a lot with this kind of stuff, that like you'd be surprised how it isn't a perfect match all the time. But I'm just saying, if you do run into an issue, be aware of that might be a problem.
You remind me of something only slightly related, but the initial question about the arrow down and pause. When I'm running that, I can't run other programs, and sometimes it takes a minute or more to go through all it's stepping down lines in a database and refreshing each one. There's probably no way to have that running in a window all by itself while I'm doing stuff elsewhere. I am pretty sure that's correct.
keystrokes, yeah, you're in a lot of trouble.
The best way for me to do that is to log on with an entirely physically separate computer and have it doing that while I'm doing other things.
Well, here's the other thing, you know, and I'm not knocking what you're doing, right? Because we all start somewhere, but depending on the programs you're trying to control, there might be ways you can navigate in that structure to get to where you want, right? I mean, you could even automate, you know, sending SQL to connecting to things. I mean, there's a lot of other things you might be able to do that you weren't really thinking about.
That's the program that is through Citrix where I can't get any
auto. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, well then, yeah, you're screwed.
I have to. It has shortcuts built into it, and I'm using those. And I'm.
Which is a good point, right? Yeah. Right.
And I'm sending those shortcuts as just text keyboard entries. You know, like alt down.
Now, something to keep in mind, at least to ask, is is there any possible way you could get a program installed on that remote computer?
I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
It's always good to ask, right? But yeah, if it's on the Citrix.
In fact, it's not even when I'm physically as close as I can be, it's still through Citrix. I mean, there's a Citrix host. No one has a direct.
Yeah, and I'm actually working on a project. We just finished it, or sort of. The clients are using it and testing it, but we remoted in with TeamViewer to a remote computer that was using remote desktop to connect to the other computer. So it was really remote, and we were able though to get AutoHotkey installed on that second computer, you know, in order to automate the one it was connecting to, and then we still couldn't, like you said, we couldn't do a lot of stuff, but it was still better than nothing at all. But you're right, is sometimes you're screwed in how you approach it.
You have to in a laborious way. I guess if you're still wanting other questions, do tell me when we run out of time. One of the some things that might be already written. At one point, I was trying to use a associative array, and I wanted to sort it so that the non-numeric index was ordered, and then give a number to each of those orderings. Somebody has probably already written an algorithm that does neat things for you, like take an associative array and resort it so that you have a number assigned to each of the string values within. I'm not sure I'm being complete. And this, I haven't done a good enough forum search for this yet, but because I imagine somebody has already written this. If you have an associative array, one of the values consists of, we'll say, strings or something, and I want to alphabetize the strings and then assign a new index value, a third parameter to that.
Yeah, I've seen some on the forum of people that have a script that will alphabetize or use a numeric sort on your values, if that's what you're asking.
And I'll show on that more later. That's not so much an AutoHotkey question, I think, as a programming algorithm question. And I'm sure it exists, or I can make one. Let's see. Is there something else? I thought I had another question. I can't remember what it was now. That might be all the ones I'm immediately thinking of. Thank you for your help.
Yeah, it's unfortunate with that Citrix computer. It's funny that client where I was telling you about that we're working on. We had all this, we had all these talks and everything sounded great. And then at the last minute, he's like, oh, by the way, I did mention that this is, on a remote computer, right? And I'm like, what? Because it really negates so much of what you can do, the fancier stuff. However, you still can do a lot, but, and to your point, which is what you said, often the best thing to do is just to have a whole second computer that's sending that automation so you can still continue to work, because you're working with sending literal clicks and things, and there's not much you can do about that.
And actually, there is a second computer available, so that's doable for me. I remember the other question now. This is more of a concept. I really like your Windows snip program, Joe, that does the OCR.
Sure.
And initially, for some reason, I was confused and thought it was doing it through the internet, but it's not, as you stated.
Oh, I remember.
I didn't quite know why I got that impression.
Yeah.
For maybe an entirely different reason, it didn't work when I disconnected. Yeah. But then I tried it again after you told me, yes, it should. And this time it worked, now that I knew it was supposed to. And I did try it on different things. One of the things I tried it on, as you mentioned, was colored numbers. Mm-hmm. And it didn't work on colored text. But it made me think that if you had a program that looked converted it all to black and white from say green on blue.
Like here, look. So if I keep the colors solid within a given thing, like it just worked great right there, right? And if I probably do this one, let's see, I don't know how to do it. So did that one, okay. But if I do both, if I do all this, that's where my guess,
it still worked. I had it even worse in that in the middle of a word, the color changed.
Well, and that's where, it's not going to be able to do that. And you'd have to,
you have to have a program first that somehow recognized color changes and made it all the same color change.
But see, I think it already is doing that. And that's why it looks at your the entire image and says, what are the darks and what are the lights? Okay, let's apply this to the whole thing. And what you're asking for is much more complex. Oh, I got to go somehow understand this part here is a word, and then there's a block here that I need to flip it. Does that make sense? So yeah.
Flip the color.
Right.
Yeah. Like if we take the word awesome here, and the first 3 letters are green and the last 4 are red, to recognize that it's all one word.
Well, you could definitely apply. Now, if there's a lighter green and a darker green, I think there is some stuff you could do to help it try to, if it's close. But when you're talking about fully inverted, like going from, I forget what the stuff's called, but the black background with the white, and then it inverts to having the white with black, like I don't know how that would be really, to me, very complicated.
Yeah. So the thing I'm trying to apply it for, it writes words on top of a changing background, and it makes the words readable by inverting them from its background to make it easier for the person using that software to read it. But I want to get that text out. It's being displayed. And it's like the inverting that you can set on your on Windows, where it changes color when you move over things. That's how that software displays the text. Is of a background that changes color.
Is this still on the Citrix computer or something?
That one is not on the Citrix computer. Yeah. However, it's being displayed as a picture as opposed to an ASCII.
Okay.
It's not on a Windows computer, but I'm going to have to deal with it as a ping or a.
Okay.
So, well, that's a difficult problem. Not maybe impossible, but probably involves looking at pixel color changes.
The other thing I would say, and this is where, I've had this. Well, I've had OCR built into my screen clipping tool for, I don't know, let's say 5 years. And at first, it was using Tesseract, if I remember correctly. And again, I didn't do any of that. I borrowed that, right? And then someone told me, hey, the Windows 10 has a built-in OCR stuff. And so I just swapped it to that, and it works great, right? Having said that, there are APIs out there that you can use, and then you have to be online, but you can, use a web service API and send them the image. And I remember I was playing with one where it was like, detect how much flesh is in this picture, right? So to help try to spot pornography and stuff. I mean, there's APIs that are out there where you don't have to do all the coding, right? You can say, and there were some for OCR, you can say, hey, send them the picture, it'll return the text, right? And those are probably much more advanced. They're probably using some AI that's really advanced. Why would you want to go try to write all this code, right? Like, why not just leverage, if you don't mind paying a couple pennies, I would definitely consider that.
That project, although useful in some situations, is not a problem I need to deal with right now. So I probably won't do that soon. that is one that somebody else besides, if you want to commercialize something, that I know who would be interested in buying that. But there's not a big market, but the small market would be interested in it. I personally don't need that right now. I used to need it. I don't need it anymore. So my personal motivation is not high, but I know some other people that would be interested. And the problem there is that the text has inverted color because of a background that's changing. I'll get back to that problem. That's probably a difficult one. My thought of how to approach it is to have all the colors, take their numeric values and look for something that looks like differences and somehow converting it all to black and white.
Well, like I said, I think that's already being done in the scripts that we use, right? It's just the problem is when you have a range that flips that index, how would it know to, that this isn't the same, it's same.
Difficult.
Yeah.
So the background is changing in a smooth fashion. The letters are, of course, are abrupt edges. Anyway, I have to get back to that.
Yeah. If you have a photo editor, you could just manually try to capture your screen, copy it in your editor, and then apply the black and white filter or the gray scale filter, and just try to see then if the...
That's an idea. Just try that and see if it works.
It's manual. Yeah, it just confirmed that the approach could work or not.
Yeah, I haven't explored all the things yet because I don't currently need that anymore. I used to need it.
No,
I'm using a lot the wind clipping and the tool. Sometimes it doesn't work. I haven't found what was the constant of why it didn't work. Maybe it was colors, but most of the time it works well. And
for me,
very fast. It's very fast also.
Very fast. Yeah. When it's small text, that's when I run into an issue. When it's very small. So yeah. But what I was going to say was also, now I never used it for that, but the AutomateMyTask is concept-wise borrowed from a function we found from, I think, feiyu called find text, right? And it's kind of like, it actually, it's really working with images. However, when you study the code, he actually has like letters built into it, and you can do OCR. I understand. I haven't done it with his tool. So because he's looking for letters, and specific each letter, maybe you can go letter by letter, and maybe it would, and then it kind of groups them together, if I remember right. It was crazy, the stuff it was doing. So it's something you might want to look at.
Find text. That actually sounds like something I've been searching for a long time, because a lot of things, it's always the same font. And I would think knowing that it's always the same font will make it much better accuracy. And so this thing is under AutomateMyTask, but it's find text. And if I wanted to find...
it's not under it. It's just that we created AutomateMyTask because of find. I wasn't happy with find text, in that find text does a good job of finding the image, what you're looking for. However, there's no sending of a click. There's no interacting with it. It gives you a location, right? But it does a lot more. I'll put the link here in the chat. There's a much newer version. I'm just saying our tool is not at all, it was inspired, I guess maybe is a better way to say it, from it, but it's not related other than concept wise. But it does, when you start studying it, it has like OCR stuff in it, whereas mine doesn't at all.
Yes, I'm quite interested in that. I've been searching for a while for something I'll call a constrained OCR, where I can specify what are the acceptable characters, not all, just if I have always the same font.
Yeah, this honestly, I think that this might work for you. Yeah. It's the main drawback that I'm aware of. Oh crap! I just realized I never hit the actual share button. I put the links in the chat. This is the forum post on it. The biggest disadvantage with it is it's not very well documented in feiyu, and I can't remember if it's the Japanese or the Chinese. English is not his native language, and so he doesn't really go in and explain how it works. But it's a very powerful script.
Thank you. A lot of things more. It'll take me a while to explore all that.
Yeah. Well, and actually back to my point about earlier about talking to other people and this and that, that's honestly like Jean and I somewhat regularly jump on and we just kind of talk what we're working on. And this is what I highly encourage you, everyone watching this stuff is have someone you can bounce ideas off of and say, have you ever done this? Or, hey, I'm working on this. And suddenly you're like, man, actually like Jean's Clippy tool, which I don't know if you want to demo that at all, Jean, but I realized I was working on something in my newsletter that I send out. If you guys are all subscribed, I don't know. But I have a newsletter I send out every week. And in it right now, I am automating. I use QAP a lot to automate the writing of the HTML, which is really helpful. And I use AutoHotkey in a lot of other ways to help it. But however, right now, I don't have a convenient way to add the target, equals _ blank attribute to the A tags. So I thought, hey, you know what? I can write a script that'll look at the HTML, and anytime it finds an A tag that doesn't have the target, put it in there. And then it dawned on me like, well, wait a minute, that Clippy tool that Sean's doing is probably could handle that perfectly, because you can either submit AutoHotkey scripts or you can just do basic text replace. And that's what I think at some point we'll probably do a video, right, John, just of like, hey, here's the basic way of, hey, you know what? Because having another target equals _ blank probably won't break the tag. We'll verify that, but that's the simple, easy way. It's super simple. A regular expression would be great, but just depends on what you're doing.
I'll give you one
just
last
explaining.
question. Okay.
Yeah, just a word. Sometimes just explaining your issue to someone else will make you find yourself the solution to your issue. So it's good, as Joe was saying, that to have opportunities to chat with someone about your issues. And these live sessions can be an opportunity for you or other users to share their issue. We have a Milkman Postman that has an issue that maybe will share with us next week about parsing data to put it in a GUI. So something just to explain something will help find the solution.
We're almost out of time, so I don't want to take you up too much, but thought of one last question, which not directly AutoHotkey, but just in case you two who know a lot of things have come across it. Taking a table out of a PDF file is difficult to preserve the table structure. Have you found a way to do that?
I think I put it, let me see. I read something on that just the other day and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to go look at that. I don't know how to import data from, so I think this might've been the one I'm thinking of, how to import data from a PDF to Excel. And it showed, that you could outline, I think you could outline the table. Oh yeah, so I saw something here with tables. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But generally speaking, you're right, it sucks. It's not a fun, easy process. Now, what I would say-
excuse me, Joe, continue.
Well, what I'd say is the Adobe Acrobat Creator has a COM object. And if you're rich enough where you can buy that program, because it's not cheap, that COM object, I've had it where I've been able to use it. It does a great job extracting tables, right? And that COM object is highly reliable and very powerful. Unfortunately, though, you got to have a legit copy of it to, in order to do that.
And I don't have that. There are various free PDF editors, but they may not be as neat as that.
No, and they don't have COM objects. Yeah, and I'll show you just to give you an idea how much stuff I've worked on with it. So this is my work. I think I'd put that under here. Is there a PDF? No, maybe it was actually up under here. So this Arch Exchange, if I remember correctly, that's the COM object from Adobe. GoScript is one, PDF to Word. Now, Word used to have a built-in thing. I don't know why they got rid of it, but actually that used to work really well. There's PDF to text. Yeah, those are the ones that I've played with and have had, okay results extracting text, but that table structure, except for this one and the PDF one. I'm sorry, my bad. The Word one. They all sucked at it. Now the PDF to Word, when it worked, and I'm happy to, let me see if PDF to Word, then Excel. Because this guy, he worked for the Boy Scouts of America, and I was talking, it was my rep, whatever, and I I'm like, what you doing on, Michael? And he's like, oh, I'm working on these. So he's like, every week I got to go in here and I download all these PDFs. Then I have to go into here and I have to do all the stuff. And it was so painful. I'm like, let me take a look. And so with, about an hour and a half to work, I used Word to open the file. And then every time in that file, this is where, there happened to be a certain text at the beginning of the table and at the end of the table. So I used Word to grab the text. And then after I got all the text, I looked for certain beginning endpoints. And now it kept the columns. So it dumped into Excel great, which was I got really excited about. It was like, hey, this is not terrible. I think I have a video on it somewhere. But yeah, if you want, I have no idea if this still works, but do you have access to Word, Daniel?
Yes.
Okay, well, let me, I'll throw it in the chat. I don't know. I mean, clearly I did these a while ago, 2017, but there's both. Yeah, it's a painful, it's a real bummer, that like, I don't know if they purposely make it difficult or what, but it's now, this is where, again, not to sound like a broken record, but there are public APIs available that have OCR and things like that, where you could submit that PDF and, they're using much more advanced AI. I think of, the RPA spectrum as a spectrum, right? There's the way left side, which is very structured data. This is stuff, especially where people like us are using interactively with a program, we're doing stuff. Then there's the far end, the other side, which is like AI, and the computer is just doing stuff for you, and it's no humans are involved, right? This job you're doing is much more suited for something along to that far right side that actually has some AI and a brain, or some really advanced logic that can work it out.
And hopefully that was going to be me telling it what the structure is.
Right.
If the structure is, I don't have to deal with free form. I don't have to deal with something that changes each time. I have only a couple ways it can be structured. So I was hoping I could tell it what the table was going to be like.
Cool. Well, yeah. And I mean, this sounds stupid, but did you try the OCR tool on it?
Yes, I did. And what I got, and actually I wrote a program to fix this. It's just not very elegant. It gives me column 1 followed by column 2 followed by column 3.
Sure.
And I actually wrote a program then in AutoHotkey that will rearrange that. What I had to do was, since there's a header row, I separately use clip window on the header row and then separately on the whole document. The AutoHotkey script then looks at the items in the header row and recognizes when a new header shows up and then starts a new row.
Cool.
And it actually worked. It was kind of, for me, not maybe for you, but for me, a laborious AutoHotkey program to write. But it worked. It has a disadvantage that you have to do the 2 copying steps, one for the header row and then separately for the entire document. And it seems like it should be able to recognize columns.
And you couldn't just say, hey, do the whole thing, and after the first line break, treat everything to the left of it as the header row? That wouldn't have worked.
It might. Maybe should be part 2 of my version. You'd have to designate, you have to start your copy not in the whole document, but you have to start it on the header row. That's for it to recognize what the header was. Yeah. But that's doable.
Yeah, and here's the thing, right, which has been my whole philosophy with everything I've done is you baby step through it, right? You write something first, it's crude, but it gets, it helps with some of the laborious process. And then over time, you'll think about new ways to, other things you hadn't thought of and be like, what? If I just look at this, I can do some math, or I can do certain things or count. Like I wrote one to detect the delimiters in a file. And I said, what? Well, the header row is always going to have the delimiters just like the other rows, right? If there is a header row, let me go through and count how many tabs there are, count how many commas there are, and say, hey, let's just use the one that has the most. And that way, if I don't know, I can make a best guess at it. It was crude, but you know what? It saved me time.
It's good to be able to talk to 2 people who have tried so many things.
No, and that's where having just over time you develop, find some people you can talk to, and first off, which is, I'm sure you've heard this, the whole bobblehead approach, right? Have a bobblehead on your desk and talk to it, because often you'll solve your own problems speaking your issues out loud. You hear yourself and you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. And often it's also take a break, come back later and stop what you're doing. But definitely looking at what other people are working on and going, man, I hadn't thought of that. There's lots of things that you suddenly realize. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, continue. Just finish. I was just going to say that I while you were talking about that, I just tried to copy a table from PDF file to the clipboard and see what's in the clipboard, because the clipboard contains different format of what you copied, and so there's no good end to what I will say. But so of course there's the text format, and my questioning was, are there some tabs, for example, when you switch from one column to the other? If it's a very simple table, there would be end of line at the end of a row and tab between columns. And what we see in the text format is that we have the end of lines, but we don't have tabs between the columns. All we have is a space. So a space could be anywhere, not only between columns. So you could not use the tab as a delimiter to paste your table to Excel, for example, that could recognize the tabs as being delimiters for various columns. Then I look at the other format that the clipboard contains. I can share my screen.
So if you're not aware of it, the clipboard has what, like 6, Sean? Maybe a lot of different, when
it depends on the source of your.
Well, I'm talking about up to, though, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's like, let's say 6 different kinds of memory, of things that can be in memory. When you copy, it can have text, it can have HTML, or rich text, or plain text, or a picture, or a file, right? And when you copy, depending on the program, it's really interesting, is it's based on the program you're copying from. It will set those, multiple times. And then when you go to paste, that also kind of says, hey, what do we think we want? And it pastes the one it thinks you want.
Yeah. So what we see here is a program I'm working on. It's not ready to be demonstrated, but what it shows here is the content of the clipboard. So I copied a table with a word in the first column and numbers in the other columns. And here between each number is a space, but it's not a tab. And if we show the invisible character in this clipboard, we see that we have these little arrows here that shows that it is an end of line, but we don't have a little arrow here that would show that it is a tab. So it's not a tab, it's a space. So it really doesn't help. The second thing I looked at is what are the different formats, just what you were talking about, Joe. So these are the different formats when you copy something from Acrobat Reader. So there's the text format that we can view here. So we see the same thing here. And there's a rich text format, and this was where I hope that we would have more delimiters, more things to work with. But no, it's the same. It's the same thing. So it really doesn't help.
Well,
the 3 others here are just. Yeah, excuse me.
That actually looked pretty good, especially when you put the invisible characters out and saw the tab, because you might be fortunate enough that your table never has non-meaningful spaces.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. If in fact, here, if the first word here does not include space, honestly, you could split it based on the space. But on the second line here, there's a space in the label that we have on the first column. So
you can use a regular expression to say, give me the words up to the first number, space number.
Yeah, this is doable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not. It's frequent that we have space anywhere in the content of our table. So if it's just an accounting table, maybe then it could work, because you could distinguish numbers and letters or spaces.
And the other thing I've run into, Jean, is different PDF files. Sometimes they will have things stored as a table, as a format, and sometimes they don't. So just because the one you didn't have it doesn't mean they all don't have it, is my point, right? It's
the one I used was a save as PDF file from Excel. So it's Excel saving as PDF. That's what I used as an example.
But some forums you find online and stuff, they'll have Forms, and sorry if that's a bad reusage, some PDFs you'll find online from documents will have quote unquote forms inside, and those will actually have a structured, thing in them. And what I don't know, John, is
Yes.
that example you had there, would it, solve that?
Yeah. But
Awesome.
PDF is just copying text from PDF is very difficult. Sometimes you select something, it select something at the end of the page and then at the top of the page. So it all depends on how the PDF file was created and where images were put, which approach was used to insert images, or table, inside. I mean, text table, for example, inside your document. So yeah, it's very. It's not done for being copied. It's done for being printed or looked at, but not to be reused, unfortunately.
John, your program you're working on looks very useful, the clipboard viewer. I looked online and found somebody else's version of a clipboard viewer. It does not look as nice as what you've got.
Yeah, clipboard viewing is one part of it. The other part is clipboard rules, so that can change the content of the clipboard based on different rules. I'll put the link to a page if you are interested being kept informed of that on my forum, so that when I have something ready to be tested as a beta release, I will announce that on that forum.
I found the video. This is the one that so here we go. So it dumped it into Excel for me, right? And you can see it did a pretty darn good job at grabbing that data from the PDF. I don't know if I opened the PDF. It would have been nice if I had actually opened the initial file. And I'm really surprised I don't have a copy of it here. Anyway, awesome. Did anyone else have anything else they're wanting to work on or need some help with?
You've covered a lot of ground, and I think that's all the questions I have for the moment. I know you stop about now, so I don't want to keep you, but thank you again, both of you.
Thank you to you, Daniel, to be with us. It's good to have someone asking questions in this session, because sometimes it was quiet between Christmas and New Year's Eve. It was very quiet, so Joe and I can chat, but it's good to have real questions from real users. And we have some people on the YouTube chat also who ask questions that could come up next week with maybe sharing their screen or giving more information about the question they have. So we're happy if we can have example or things to work on, like what you just bring. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Yeah,
awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, John. Bye.
Oh, take care of you.
Yeah, I'm all right.
Yeah.